Hi, Don. We had good attendance today. Thank you. Happy New Year, by the way. Um, what we're gonna do today, is first we're gonna do the consent agenda, which basically I'm looking for somebody to make a motion to approve the minutes. And then a second to that, and then we'll vote. Is there a motion?
Yes. So moved, Ken.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, everybody who approves the meeting from last minute, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Anybody that doesn't, say no. It's unanimously approved. What we could do is, the committees have any reports to make? I know we're kind of in the new year, so maybe not a lot of activity was going on.
Yeah, the policy committee, because of the holidays, we didn't meet, so we don't have anything new to report.
Okay. And then there was energy efficiency team. I guess Edgy's part of that. So.
Yeah, we didn't meet either.
Understand. You have some updates, George?
Sure. So just a couple updates that I've been working on, specifically regarding transportation. The city applied to the Community Access to E-Bike Grant Program, which will be a e-bike program for income qualified employees. So we should hear about funding for that hopefully by the end of next week. We're in the middle of evaluating the EV readiness plan proposals. So hopefully we can get going on that within the next week or so to advance that through purchasing. There's also a project in purchasing right now for 5 more EV chargers. That's going through procurement. So that's in there, and we're waiting to get that issued for the vendor replies. And then, we're working to issue the purchase order for the Beam Arcs that are the off-grid charging solutions. So we're working through that. And then in addition, on Friday, I'll be meeting with the Pueblo Food Project to plan an agrivoltaic project for their community garden with Serena Sakal and Megan Moore. Agrivoltaics, if you're not familiar, is the process of having solar panels and then a agriculture or garden underneath. The theory is that the agriculture cools the solar panels, and the solar panels or the agriculture is shaded to help growing and just more temperature control. So we're going to be meeting on Friday to discuss the project plan, what funds are available, and really the next steps for that. And then I'd also like to just pull up a couple of data images from our ChargePoint account. So on the screen here, this is the ChargePoint data from November. So we could see that total accumulated megawatt hours for November is just at above 2.25 megawatt hours. So trending upward. So this is for November.
How many ports are there? How many charge ports does this represent? Everything the city owns, or?
Yes, so 10 ports, I believe, right now.
Does that include the police stations? Or is this just public chargers?
This includes everything that's in the ChargePoint account, so it does include that.
Yeah, George, can you share the chart, please?
Oh, yes, apologies. Let me share the screen here.
The one charger that's not in there is the DC fast charger.
Sure.
The others are
Apologies for that. I'll do it online.
city specific.
So this is for November, as I shared. So this next chart is for December now. We're still seeing utilization every day, even on Christmas Eve and Christmas. And for December, we see that we're just over 2.5 megawatt hours. So trending in the upward direction. couple other notes from the ChargePoint account. Unique drivers for December 29, about 30 unique drivers for November. And then we see in September, it's at 35 unique drivers, so possibly from late summer, early fall traveling. 170 sessions for the month of December, right under 150 for November and October. So this shows that we're trending in the right direction with the utilization of the chargers. Average session length, just under 3 hours. Some idle time in there as well. So looks like people are charging for long durations, getting the most that they can. And then in megawatt hours, we see just under 2 megawatt hours for October. And as I mentioned, 2.25 megawatt hours for November, and then just under 2.5 megawatt hours for December. So trending upward, getting that utilization for those chargers. And then financials, over the last 30 days, just under 2.6. Electricity estimated at a cost of 12 cents kilowatt hour, equaling $310, which compared to petrol vehicles, I don't think it compares with cost savings. And then, of course, the environmental impact, 11,400 kilos of greenhouse gas avoided. And it's like planting 293 trees for 10 years. So that is updates from ChargePoint, as well as some of the data relating to that. So excited to see where the EV readiness plan leads us and the addition of more chargers as well as more fleet electrification.
I had a comment because I'm an EV owner. So, Black Hills has a port over here, which I don't think that your numbers account for that, right? That's correct.
Not on the city.
I go over there typically to charge, but one of the units just doesn't work. So there's 4 connections over there, only 2 of them work. And I went over to the one by the parking garage with the city owned, plugged in there, and it failed on me. I don't know why. I didn't check it until I would check it.
Did it turn it off while you were
It
charging?
didn't charge at all.
But I mean, it didn't, I guess with the system off,
No, the system was.
I guess it's still saying.
It told me I was connected, but I guess I didn't connect correctly. And that's an experience I have a lot with the public stations. When you go to a Tesla charger, they work fine. Of course, they cost 30 cents a kilowatt hour too. So, and I'm complaining about something that's free, but I like free stuff. The other thing about EVs is their operating costs are way low. Okay, I mean, you don't have to go to the gas station. Typically, you charge in your garage. We have a hybrid car and this EV. We don't drive the gas car much at all. This is my wife and I. And we're we don't. It would take occasional trips to Colorado Springs or Denver or up into the mountains. And typically that charge from home, gets you back and forth. So it's, I would say the cost is probably about 20% of what a gas car is. Now, we're charging off our solar system, basically reducing up our bank, and I'm working to fix that. So I'm really not, paying anything for my power. Wherever I go, it's basically free. It's great. I'm really happy with it. So when you hear all this stuff about how bad, there's this misinformation about manufacturing costs and all this kind of stuff, the mining and all this. Well, my car uses a lithium phosphate LFP, lithium iron phosphate battery, so there's none of this cobalt or nickel or anything involved in it. Yeah, so when people would argue against this, it's just not true, and there's NREL information on the real environmental impact of an EV compared to internal combustion engine. So when you read stuff, especially when we're in this era that people get their information off of social media, you really got to check it, because most of that stuff is not right, or it's biased in some way. Well, I just wanted to add on the EV stuff.
Questions, if I may.
Sure.
The first is, the Pueblo Food Project, agrivoltaic food system. I have no idea, but I would just be interested to see if it would qualify for any type of, support from our new, renewable energy standard filing. I mean, there's some dollars for IQ and DI communities, and I think that's one that we should at least look at. So maybe you and I should connect on that separately.
Sure.
Is that the garden that's over here across from the new restaurant? Fuel and Iron place?
Yes, right by that bridge and on the other side of Public Works. Yes.
And my other question was, so you've already received back responses for the RFP for the EV planning?
Yes.
Do you have an evaluation committee? And the reason I'm asking is because Drive Clean Colorado actually, I think could be really helpful for you, and I could connect you with Bonnie.
Yes, actually, AJ from Dry Clean is on the evaluation committee,
Awesome, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
as well as Laura, Andrew, and Ms. Solano as well. And Dylan Goodman from the Transportation and Planning Department. And then in terms of servicing the chargers, Andrew, who really oversees that? Is that Darren or someone else from the facility?
Service contract for the chargers through the charge point.
Okay,
So when we bought them, they bought a service plan with them, so they technically maintain them. Occasionally, they let us know when one is out. I have yet to see ChargePoint show up to fix one, but we go out and reset breakers or cycle them to get them to reset or reconnect if communications are lost. So
okay,
I was just checking just now, and I see the Main Street Garage one is off, and it looks like the other Black Hills one's in use. So the other one off, and it's off now. I don't know if that was today.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, then it's showing no status. Usually that means the breaker's tripped on there, so we go back and just make sure it's connected.
When it's dead, typically the interface.
There's no screen, that's
Yeah.
correct. If you're getting a screen, then it's not a power issue, there's something else going on. That means
I got a screen, so I don't know what's going on now. Maybe it turned off.
we'll go and check.
I think that's maybe the service contracts need to be beefed up a little bit or something, or response times or something
Bought
like
as
that.
part of the package when you buy the unit. So it's not like it's a separate contract that we get to adjust service levels on. We can buy it or we can not. And so far, they haven't reached a point where we've needed them to do something to fix it. It's always been something we can fix a breaker. So this is just at least good learning data for the first few stations at the city.
What's your response from employees that are using EVs like right now?
I mean, to my knowledge, it seems that people are comfortable using them, and they're definitely getting used.
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to just dig in and do more research, depending on the different issues they may face or
Yeah.
other challenges.
We just switched our whole fleet over, bought, I think we're at 5 or 6 Lightnings now and 3 cargo vans that are all EV. So our biggest issue with employees is the fact that they don't know how to use them. So if we didn't set the keys out and tell them to use them, they would default to a gas truck because they trusted it more. But now we hit all the keys to the gas trucks, and when you show up in the morning and nobody's there and the only things available is the EV, you have to now trust the EV. So I would say our employee response has been trust. But I think once they get used to it and things like that, So and we've identified like all of your charge points as places that they can charge or do certain things, so.
Do
Yeah.
you charge your vehicles at
At
your
Still
home office?
City. Mhm.
Do you know roughly how many miles each vehicle travels a day?
I can actually come with some really good data next time.
That would be
Of
interesting.
what we're tracking and stuff like that, but I know that Lightnings, they're about 100 mile radius, like on a charge. Actually, they're 200 mile radiuses on a charge, and the cargos are 100 mile radiuses on a charge, so. Like, you know, we tend to plan a little bit more about who's going where and how things are getting where. But we just we're getting rid of 2 V8s, 3 diesel trucks. You know, totally converting besides, you know, we have to have a diesel to, you know, haul some things and, you know. Equipment, things like that, but other than that, you won't see anything but an EV. So, but we have all of that data and I was looking at your charge point and stuff like that. It'd be just interesting to see how those go. Employees that charge at home, we put solar panels on their house so that they could charge at home for free.
Yeah, Tyler, that's a really good testimony for a private business fleet. Did you guys apply for any state funding for that, for the vehicles or for charging infrastructure?
No,
I didn't think so. Okay, because I didn't see any of those awards come through in Pueblo.
they just came about like, I think. Alpine had a hard time selling one of their EV cargos and they hit us up and asked if we were interested. Ran the numbers and between those 8 trucks, we've gotten rid of 10. Like gassers and condensed down to 8. And I think our savings right now, fuel wise, is about $5,000, like on a month that we've been running.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
pretty big. And essentially, like Ken says, it becomes free because, you know, like we had solar panels laying around that, you know, happened to be taken off somewhere or, you know, just kind of whatever. So, yeah, like it just, you know, continues to save that amount of money and if not more.
Yeah.
So,
And you can charge them DC too, which
Yeah.
helps, right?
oh yeah,
We'll go through an invert.
yeah.
I wonder, like, with something like a cargo van, is it practical to put some panels on top of the van and just let it charge as it's
It-
hitting in the sun? Yeah,
Possibly,
Yeah.
like we haven't ventured into that yet.
probably have ladder
Like,
racks.
yeah, we have to be really careful right now how the weight is an issue. So, you know, you have to plan a lot for the weight and then the F-150s, of course, like. You can't have a ladder rack because it destroys like the aerodynamics of whatever it is.
It'll cost you some mileage.
It'll cost you like, yeah, some batteries and stuff like that. So our default is now a truck topper that stays in line with the aerodynamics of the truck. And then some better shelving on the inside. So it's been quite like cost wise, it saved us money. Cost wise, it's cost us some money to get them set up and properly and things like that. But yeah, I think in the long run, you know, it's just interesting to watch people try to use them and, you know, I don't have one, but everybody else does. But I was just wondering like how your employees or how the city, you know, feels. And I know you have quite a bit of Mustangs and things like that for the police force, right? So just wondering how they were getting along using them, if they liked them, and, you know.
There was a newspaper article where the chief, you know, was driving a Lightning truck now,
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
And he really liked it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, so I think there's some, you know.
They're fast.
You get used.
I really like it too.
Electric vehicles are fast, yeah, they're super
Yeah.
fast, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah, Andrew, I had a question for you. So it sounds like you haven't had any major repair needs with the chargers. So I'm very curious about, you know, how much downtime there's been with them, because that's been our biggest issue with our chargers, most of which were ChargePoint as well.
I would say.
And
in
then my
general-
other,
Oh, sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead. Yes,
go ahead.
ask the second one first, go ahead.
and then my other question was, I couldn't remember what the fee was that the city was charging for usage on those stations. If you could just
Sure.
remind me.
Of course, Yeah, right now the fees are set for 0 through September 30th of 2024. So as the resolutions passed back in 2022, I believe. So that's gonna hold until then unless it changes earlier. But the intent was to set it up for that and get the appetite out there and make it available. Make some charging infrastructure available for people, but they're all currently level 2 chargers that are out there. So 6 ports publicly available now, more hopefully very soon in the future. Then the police department got their chargers. You were mentioning the vehicles, right? We've got several Mach-E's, we've got 2 Lightnings. There's Parks is getting some electric trucks hopefully early this year. Those B-Marks that we were talking about earlier are hopefully gonna support them, putting the infrastructure out at the park, out at City Park.
Yeah.
So we don't have to run everything and tie it in. So hopefully those will pan out there, and then 2 of those will be made available for public use as well. Not the vehicles, the chargers.
Right.
The other question you had kind of about maintenance and reliability, generally speaking, the chargers have been fine. It's occasional that the one at our Main Street garage trips, flips off. So I try to monitor through the app and just kind of see how things are going. If it's gray, I know I need to go check it. And it's right across the street from the office, so it's a quick run out there for me. We can unlock the box, flip that breaker. The one out at Weisbrod, the parking garage there, occasionally it's got a safety disconnect on it that people like to mess with. So it's generally not a maintenance issue. It's more of a vandalism or I don't know.
Mischief.
Yes, mischief kind of an issue. And then the one at the north end has been pretty reliable. It's been off once, I think, in the time that I've been here. So in general, the issues that we've had have been self-correcting, either by just recycling the power or recycling the power just to reset the communication connection. But we haven't had any major issues, nothing with hardware that's got to be replaced or anything like that so far. So,
Great, thank you.
8th.
Andrew and George, well, on the back of Laura's comment, I'm wondering, and based on what George showed us a little earlier, I wonder, is it out of the question to seek a monthly update on city vehicles and charging stations and so forth? Just to get yeah.
In terms of the status of them?
Well, how it's working, we saw some graphs a little earlier about, how much energy they're using and so forth. But what I've just heard from you now is a much more in-depth, as a response to Laura's questions and others, about exactly how we're progressing each month. Is it possible to do that?
Sure. I mean, the reports that we get that George presented out of ChargePoint are pretty straightforward. They can be downloaded very quickly. I'd want in the dashboard, I think we've kind of got 2 separate use cases, right? The fleet side and the public use side.
Yeah.
And they're 2 completely different behaviors and dynamics.
That's very interesting to see that difference. And I think on the business side as well, it's great. It's really great to hear the report on how well you're doing, as a solar business. That's terrific. I mean, it's great to hear.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and move forward with the next part of the agenda, which is hearing from the Colorado Energy Office, Energy Performance Contract Program Managers, Charlie and Steven. You're on with the rest of the Energy Commission. If you have the presentation ready, you can go ahead and request to share your screen, or I do have it pulled up as well in a PDF format. So take it away.
Before you go, Charlie and Aaron, I want to give a preface to this, okay? So a couple of weeks ago, Charlie and Aaron came and presented to George and myself this presentation. I wanted to give it to the Energy Commission because I think you'll enjoy this a lot. The water, Alan brought this into the waterworks too, so the waterworks has heard this. We'll let you make a judgment on the benefits of this. I think they're tremendous. this is a way to kind of drive the city of Pueblo to renewable energy, to electrify where they can electrify, where it makes sense. And my hope is that what we'll do is we'll make a recommendation to get Charlie and Aaron here in person to present at a work session to the city council. So with that, we'll let the folks present.
Yeah, and George, it looks like the host has turned the presentation off. The ability for us to.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can fix that real quick.
She might be next to the screen.
Oh, yeah.
If it's too troublesome, it's not that hard for us to use the slides you have also.
I think it's right.
Is that for all participants?
We can do it now.
Okay, please try now, and if not, I can just pull them up. Okay, great.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we'll go through this and tell you about it. Oren's the other engineer in the group, so he may disappear for a couple of weeks. His wife's about to have a baby, so
Yeah.
he's gonna leave it with me for a little bit, but so I'll be your main point of contact at least for the next month, I think. But this is a 3. Delen's been both Oren and I started last March, so we're approaching our first year here. But Delen's been around about 5 years, a little over 5 years, and she's now our associate director. But she knows the EPC program pretty well. But I'll try not to use too many acronyms, but I probably will. This is the whole Colorado Energy Office, and if you do want to try to get some rebates or anything for your stuff, we do have the transportation guys in here. You can always contact Christian, and he'll tell you who to talk to about getting your grants for the transportation groups right here. But yeah. So this Pueblo's done a couple of projects back in, I think, 2017. I didn't really dig into how much y'all did back then, but it looks like y'all did a couple of 2 phases of EPC contracting back then. So I can always pull up those reports and send them to you if you want me to, what was accomplished and everything. But if sometimes a lot of cities and counties have so much turnover, there's not a lot of institutional memory, but we usually keep the files around so we can find them and send them if you need it. But primarily, energy performance contracting is just a financing and contracting tool that allows public entities to use their utility savings from gas, electric, water. We've even had some people include changing their telephone contracts or their communications contracts because they may not have looked at them for 10 years or something, and all of a sudden the things that can be cheaper and more comprehensive, and they can use those savings that the contractor finds to help finance any energy improvements they may have over the years. And this program's been around about 25 years in the state of Colorado. The federal government uses it for a lot of their projects. A bunch of states use this particular type of contract. It also helps in Colorado because it helps you work around TABOR a little bit without having to go out to a vote or anything if that needs to happen. So the statute guarantees utility cost savings. The project has to be cash flow positive over whatever time period of financing you use. The statute also requires 3 years of measurement and verification. So, and the equipment is the cost weighted average life of the equipment. We don't want the equipment running, wearing out before you've paid for it. So cost weighted average life equipment has to be greater than whatever project financing term you're using there. So So, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in and do it and ask me right away. This is kind of how it goes. You know, you've got your utility spend over here on the left before you do an energy performance contract. They identify the savings. They help you look for financing. They help you look for grants and federal dollars that are out there right now, and anything they can do to make their project bigger. Then you use the savings is used as a payment for whatever financing you get, and then your operating costs should drop after that, after you've paid off that financing.
Jeremy, I have a quick question for you, if I may. Can you pop back to the prior screen? My only question is it says that it has to be cash flow positive for the life of the project. I know that a lot of times they stop monitoring after 3 years, because if you're getting savings in the first 3 years, you're typically gonna get it for the life, right? But I'm just curious about that cash flow positive over the life of the equipment. Is that measured separately in a different way, or?
So the way we measure it is it comes under what they call the measurement verification protocols. Every different project will use similar protocols to measure the savings. So it depends on what you agree to with the company you end up contracting with. So what happens is, like for a lighting project, if you just do lighting, you're not gonna separate out that lighting and meter it separately throughout the project. What you're gonna do is you're gonna measure how much lighting, how much each of the lights is, or a percentage of the lights are using now, and then they'll test it before, and then they'll test it after the installation, and they'll give you the delta on that, and they'll say whatever hours per year you're using, that's what you're going to save. Something like solar, you can independently meter it. It's fairly easy. If you're doing a very comprehensive project in each of your buildings, you may use the total utility for that particular building, so that you may just use your meter readings and do it. So the measurements can take place a number of different ways. Of course, it costs money to measure, so there's a balance between, you don't want to spend $50,000 to measure $20,000 worth of savings. So there's that kind of balance that goes in when you're making those decisions at the time you do the EPC project. And to step back a second, there's basically two contracts which the state has templates for. The first is the IGA contract, which is the investment grade audit contract. And then after the audit contract, that's when you come to a decision about how big the project's going to be, and you sign the EPC contract, the energy performance contract. And in the energy performance contract, that's when you make the decisions about how much M&V and what kind of M&V you want to do. So frequently they try to include, or maintenance savings. If your guys are having to call out the HVAC company twice a week to keep things going with baling wire and duct tape, then you're paying those guys money. And if they can save money from having to pay those guys every month, then they're going to include that in the whole cost savings. So does that answer your question, or is that?
I think so. It's mostly all measured on the front end, is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I got it. Perfect. Thank you.
And so but you can do a whole, some projects, they do a whole meter reading, and they can track it. See, we like it if you can independently meter it, but because you can definitively see that you've saved the kilowatt hours, which is saving the money. And that they're usually in the 15 or 20 years, your energy costs per kilowatt are not going to be the same today as they're going to be in 20 years. So they add a little bit each year, 2%, 3%, or whatever cost increase per year as how they track it. So
makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, this is the whole how the project looks over the time period, and these are the 5-step process we go through. This is kind of the educational time and the initial engagement and everything, and then I think I've sent George the the MOU, and we can work on getting an MOU signed with whoever needs to sign it at your level over there. And that just, it's a non-binding, it's not a big deal. It's just something where the energy office needs it so we can commit to spending the time to work on the project with you guys. If when you want to do a ESCO selection, you can decide between our 15 different energy service companies we've pre-approved for doing these projects. And we have a list of them. We have a whole package about how to do an RFP to send it out and to get proposals. You can do a sole source, you can do limited to 3, you can send it to all 15. So it just depends on how you want to do it and what your procurement rules are locally. You know, the fun of being a local control kind of state. So then we can send you copies of the IGA contracts, and that's what you'll be signing with them. The way that I'll show you on the next slide, or a couple of slides, about what the cost is for the IGA. If you just do the IGA, you don't have to go on to an EPC project, and we have a cost per square foot for the IGA, so that every ESCO is working on the same kind of playing on the same playing field. And then they can, some people can't come in a low ball and then hit you with a higher price later. But and then after the IGA is done, you'll figure out the scope of the project. Usually they'll present you with 2 or 3 different levels. Some people get a little scared when they see a $20 million project, and they might just want to do a $5 million project, or like you did last time, they might just want to do a phase project. Well, they'll be like, okay, let's start with lighting and this HVAC that we have to replace because it's failing, but then let's go on to do a secondary project to get the rest of our equipment or maintenance up to current standards. And then that's the investment grade audit is anywhere from 3 to 9 months usually. And then depending on how big the area is and everything, and how much difficulty there is getting access, implementation, the EPC contract can be anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on how big the project is. And then we have the 3 years of measurement verification. So here's the cost of just the investment grade audit. We do it based on facility square footage and distance from from Denver, basically. So I think you guys are right at 130 or so, or yeah. So probably somewhere in this row. Or you might, I'm not sure. What is Pueblo? 150?
120 probably.
Yeah, so it's probably right around one of these, depending on how much you want to look at. And these projects can look at everything. They can look at wastewater treatment plants. They can look at ball fields. They can. We've seen water meter projects done. We've seen street light projects done. So it depends on how things are set up for you guys and who owns what. Sometimes the local utility owns the street lights, and sometimes the city owns them. So there's things like that to go on. Here's some of the benefits. It's a single procurement contract, so you don't have to go out and do multiple bids for multiple contractors and everything. The energy service company handles all that, and they have a GC, so down there working on the project, and they handle all the interactions with the individual contractors that do the work. It has to generate positive cash flow, guaranteed energy and maintenance cost savings. Promotes local workforce and economic development. So if like most state contracts, we try to include a local workforce type of thing. So if you guys have local people you want to work on the projects, the energy service companies will try to use the contractors you want. They'll get bids from 2 or 3, and if one of your local people falls within that group, then then or falls within the right pricing for that, then they'll use that. So they're not just bringing in their crew from Kansas or whatever. And the no-cost support from the energy office is Oren and I, and we're there to review your IGA with you and attend meetings with you to answer any questions that you may have. So as I said before, we've got the standard state approved documents, pre-qualified ESCOs, the CEO engineering contract support throughout the life cycle. The rest of this is a couple of grants we have. So right now there's a building electrification grant that's going on. We're trying to, earmark 30% of grant funds for LMI and DI and just transition communities. So I think Pueblo usually qualifies for most of those. I'm not sure what they are. We've got the HEHA grant, the high efficiency electric heating and appliances. Some of you guys are old enough to watch that show, and with Roy Clark and everybody. And if you guys are leaning towards any geothermal energy work, we've got some geothermal grants right now that are available. So, and of course, DOLA is always out there giving out funds and can help support some of this sometimes, and a lot of the federal funds that are coming in through the IRA are things that look for. And most of these energy service companies have somebody on staff that can help support you in applying for grants and things like that. So they're out there looking for best grants for schools and for different grants for utilities or for local municipalities. And there's of course the EV grant programs. I think Charge Ahead and Fleet Zero. These I think they open these up every quarterly or so. I think, is that right, Warren? I think they open the Charge Ahead grants about once every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
And so you can include some of the chargers and stuff like that when you want to do these into your program. And this is how the geothermal energy grant program, if you want to do a single structure, I think Denver's starting to look at switching out some of their steam to a community district for geothermal. I don't know if they're using our grants yet because we haven't actually sent any grants yet, so or awarded any grants yet. But I think that's, and the third one is just if you've got a hot springs you want to exploit and make some electricity, but that's more for private entities that'll be doing that. I don't think, even though the Pueblo Water has set up their own turbine for there, which is an awesome project, I don't think you're going to do a geothermal electrical generation project. But and that's basically our presentation. If y'all have any questions on that.
I think maybe one thing I'll add in is that like some of like the main point of the EPC process is that it frees up capital. And if you're gonna do a building automation system upgrade, a lighting upgrade, a solar installation, whatever it is, you don't have to have all that money sitting around and available right now. You can use those future savings to really pay for it. So, if you really want to think big picture and make some huge improvements, you can use existing capital, all those grant funds, and whatever utility tax credits and all that, put it together with the savings that are going to be achieved, and you can do some really big things.
I got a couple of comments. I think you made this in a meeting that we had between George and I, that you wouldn't, if you know that there's a asset or a building that you're gonna eventually get rid of or not use, you wouldn't perform energy out of on it, right? So Do you know how many square foot are we talking about for?
1.5 million square feet of building space.
Hmm.
That's everything. That's every nook and cranny and picnic pavilion and, right? So I mean, we're in the throes right now of, like I say, identifying all of those assets, condition assessments, validating that data and determining how much of that, whether it's 500,000 square feet or 1 million square feet of that is really occupied usable space. But there's quite a bit of stuff that's under hangars that are not used the right way anyway. So there's an asset management component of this that's driving, or I guess being done right now, that will help us identify good target opportunities for which buildings we want to.
You know, I think there's a couple good examples, and maybe Aaron and Charlie have more up-to-date things, and Laura might know some things about this too, because I think you're involved in some of those 2017 EPCs, weren't you, Laura? With the county. Anyway, we have the CSU Pueblo that went through one of these audits, and now they're a net zero campus. The PCC organization, Joe Wanaka, went through this program, and I think they cut out about, close to $1 million of cost out of running their campus. So, to me, I tend to kind of think big. Okay, people get scared. This is a big commitment, but it's a way for us to get a path to being 100% renewable city government, right? And saving money in the process that we could actually use on projects that are more important to the people of Pueblo, rather than just a bunch of buildings. We can free up some money to do some better good for the folks.
Yeah, and I think maybe one thing I'll add to this is that what's nice about the EPC process is that there's some risk that's removed. Charlie touched on the fact that there's this cash flow positive situation, and that there's a guarantee that these energy service companies are going to make that your future utility bill is going to be less than the existing. And this investment grade audit process has a 30% and 60% phase, during which if the numbers don't look good to you, you can back out at no cost. There are these preliminary stages where if you don't feel comfortable, it's no big deal, and you can move away from it. But I can tell you that with 500,000 to 1 million square feet of project, I think you guys are going to be a good fit for it.
So the first part of this is this memorandum of understanding, and who can execute that for the city? Is that something you can do?
Need to be mayor, probably
The mayor, okay.
one of us, yeah. And it depends on what the limits are for. If it's all inside the department, then.
If you're not aware, we're right in the middle of a mayoral election too. So the ballots were, mailed today. I think they're probably in our mailboxes today. So that will get resolved this month. And whoever wins that will be installed next month, I believe. So we probably want to wait for that to kind of to happen before we made any major commitment. But I'm really interested in moving forward with this, and wanted to bring in front of the commission, because one of the steps would be to bring this in front of the city council. So and with that, you could come in and personally be here for a presentation. I guess it would be Charlie if you're out. You get maternity leave, which is a nice thing, by the way.
Yeah, it's probably me coming down.
Okay.
If it's in after mid-February, I could be involved, but the next month for me is probably going to be
You
pretty
got
tough.
You got the right priorities, okay? Um,
Laura Gitz, I see you have a hand raised. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just had two questions. Thank you for the presentation. The first question is for the CEO, and I was curious because we've seen a lot of entities do this already, like the city has, and kind of now do it for a phase 2 approach. To what extent are we seeing kind of a phase 2 that's more targeted, where communities are seeking electrification measures specifically and renewable energy assessments from these EPCs?
We're seeing a lot more renewable energy installs. I think that's been a big component of what's been going on lately is getting that. The electrification is still kind of slow. People are still just, a lot of them are updating with more efficient furnaces or boilers or a lot of times right now, because it's some people are still scared of heat pumps, basically. But in some places, it's tough if they don't have the ability to fix things in their area right now. So it's still kind of there's the chicken and egg problem of the technology's kind of there, but are the people there to help maintain things. So it's moving along, but it's not, as any of us have been in this for a while, it's not moving as fast as you want, but it's definitely moving along. But yeah, a lot of solar going on. That we hope we'll start seeing more geothermal projects, I think is the hope. But those, that's the other issue you get with this is this, EPC is somewhat limiting. It's usually, if you have a sustainability goal of getting 100% electric and 100%, off grid or whatever, the EPC process has to pay for itself. So that limits it. So unless the city can inject capital funds or get enough grants or whatever, then this is just going to be one step in getting to that ultimate goal. But it's frequently a good step. If you can get things more efficient, you can get there quicker, and this will get you there quicker, at least, and help you meet some of the building performance standards and things like that are coming around. So
Great, thank you. Yeah, and that was actually the perfect segue into my second question, which was about the building performance standard. And I don't know, Andrew, do you know how many of the city's buildings have triggered the building performance standard requirements, and to what extent we've had to benchmark?
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. I want to say it's 5 or 6 total buildings. A couple of those are like unoccupied hangars, so they have different baselines and rules, I guess, associated with them. But there's if we're referring to the ones that are over the 50,000 square foot threshold, correct?
Yeah. So the city of Denver is doing something along the lines of they're kind of doing a hybrid issue to get to all their buildings, where they've engaged, I think, 4 of our energy service companies to come in and look at different elements. Like one, they've got like 45 libraries or something. So one of the ESCOs got all the libraries, and another one was getting the municipal buildings or the wastewater treatment. I'm not sure how they divided it because they've been a little busy trying to get everything worked out. But it's that they're like, well, we don't think we can get to the level we want to get to with just the EPC process. So we're going to try to hybridize this a little bit and bring in the energy service companies to give us some, the calculations that say, well, this is how much we can do with just utility savings and how much we're going to have to do to put in to get to the next level, to get to whatever level of efficiency they want to get to for that. So that's where they are right now.
So, Charlie, Aaron, I'm curious about, to kind of coming off of Laura's question as well. Is there a method for dealing with nonprofits in particular?
There
Yeah,
is.
nonprofits fall under the purview of the EPC program as well. So
How do you, yeah, I'm just curious about how you deal with the cash positive. In other words, they just need to be able to hold themselves up to their mission. Is that right? I mean, they can't be in a, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the YMCA and I know I think a couple of the YMCA's have looked at it. The one in Colorado Springs, I think, finally decided to go forward with it, but they were having a few issues with whether to keep a building because there was more issues than they thought at the building. So but they've got some swimming pools and some rec centers that they are trying to upgrade that they were trying to use the EPC process for. And I think they might have looked at Snow Mountain Ranch or some of the YMCA's up in the mountains too. But the hospitals are starting to use them. We've got Denver Health has been doing it for a while for like 2 years now, and they're coming to the end of their process. I think they might have already jumped to a phase 2 because they were seeing much higher savings than they thought. And National Jewish just started their IGA process about a month ago, 2 months ago. So we've got a few of the smaller hospitals, some of the rural hospitals have started doing it also. So the nonprofits have been put into this program. Of course, for other private businesses, we have the PACE program and things like that. Try to push people towards, and with the IRA being a direct pay as versus having to go through power purchase agreements and things like that, that's been a nice little make it easier thing also. So
Great. Well, I have a possibility of a nonprofit geothermal project that may qualify. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't think the city of Pueblo has any geothermal opportunities, do we?
We're putting in 3 applications for single bids.
For the fire
For the
station.
fire stations.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm talking about, taking heat out of the ground and using it.
That's what it is.
Okay, but it's a heat pump, it's a ground loop heat pump
Correct.
type thing. I'm thinking of electrical generation by, taking heat out of the earth and running a steam generator or something like that.
I'm looking at John for that one.
Yeah, I think NREL has a map, a couple of maps you can refer to see if there's the resources there to do it. But yeah, I don't think Pueblo's got it if I recall, but I haven't looked closely. It's mainly up in like Steamboat and anything that has springs after their name, like Idaho Springs or Steamboat, are much more likely to have it.
We are doing these net zero fire stations. We got 3 of them, ready to build starting this year, right? So, they're going to use the ground loop heat pump systems. It's fantastic. Okay. So we're really looking forward to seeing those things come into operation. From a resource standpoint, what kind of resources would the city need to commit to seeing this through to get it started and to get into the various phases of this?
So primarily to do the RFP, we can send you the whole kit and everything, and you kind of identify what buildings you want to include into that. If you've got some that are fairly new and have been upgraded or recently, you may not include those or may not want to. But you can send out the RFP. I think I've sent George the list of the people. I don't know if I sent him the whole RFP kit or not. I'll have to look back at the email where I can send that out to you. But it's primarily filling out a few forms saying this is what we want to look at, and we're going to hold a scoping meeting or we're going to hold a meeting that says that you can come look at the facilities for half a day and do a walk through with some of the ESCOs. if they want to, or you can just say, this is what we have. They like to do an on-site walkthrough if possible. I think we did, Oren and I went to one over here at the Auraria campus one time, just because the guy who used to have our position is now their lead energy guy. So he wanted to get this program started over there, and he's got a bit of a nightmare of having 3 different colleges plus the campus administration. So he had to limit it to just his buildings. Yeah, so you can do that, and then you have a selection committee who reviews everything. So that's probably this group that's going to be doing that. You'll give a, say, 2-week proposal and come in and or a 2-week time frame for them to come up with a proposal, and they'll send you proposals, and another 2 weeks or so to review it, and then you can do the selection at that point.
Charlie, the city needed to commit the value of the square footage, right? Those costs. So whatever buildings we select, we have to allocate those funds for that.
Yeah. And the other thing that you can do is if you probably do need to allocate the funds, but if it's like 9 months out, you want to make sure it's in place. But frequently what happens, or almost every time, what happens is that the IGA costs get rolled into the EPC project. So you may not be paying out those funds at the end of the IGA. You will have them still in reserve to work into the project. So that's kind of how that works in general, is that they don't have to pay out at the end of the IGA if the EPC moves forward. So if it doesn't move forward, then they'll want to be paid. So and we have seen projects that you start off and say, oh, I think Inglewood is going through this, where it's like they kept going back and forth whether they wanted to include the wastewater treatment plant. They signed the IGA, and then they said, do we want to include the wastewater treatment plant or not? And then they finally decided to, so they just did an amendment. So it's usually not a huge deal if you leave something out at the beginning, and then if they come down and they talk to you and go, well, we could probably add some solar on that roof, or we could do something over there also. So it's not a cut and dried necessarily. There is some flexibility. These guys always want it to be bigger, but they also understand that a lot of cities or city councils don't have the appetite to jump in and do a really huge project. So
I think you'd have to emphasize the reduced risk of doing this, right? Because it's a risk benefit type analysis, right?
right.
It doesn't sound like there's the risk is that you'll do the audit and not commit, right? And then you're stuck with that. What is it? 22.5 cents per square foot assessment, right?
Right. Yeah. And that the other thing about the risk is at the end of the EPC and the M&V, and we have had some projects that have fallen a little short, and sometimes they have to write a check for, a few $1,000s because for whatever reason, the solar didn't get turned on when they said it was going to, or somebody came by and flipped a switch and and some things like that. So if you select an M&V method that is monitoring the actual use, and it doesn't meet that usage, and then they have to write you a check.
Or vice versa, right?
What's that?
I guess there's if the proposed projects aren't just infrastructure, but are also human behavior related, and the city doesn't keep its obligation to maintain thermostats at the right place, or lights don't get turned off on a schedule, or a building automation system goes bad. Those are things that the city might have an obligation to pay back as well.
Correct. Oh, well, not pay back, just that you won't be compensated for it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like we've had, like we have a school out on the Eastern Plains somewhere where they came in and added a greenhouse in the middle of the project, And you know, with extra heaters and everything and fans, and it was like, okay, well, we have to do a building model to exclude that energy use that got added, so that that's not part, you know, part of the contract. Or if you start having raves at the city hall every Friday.
It could happen.
Send me an invite. Yeah, we've seen stuff like that where, you know, somebody installs a bunch of solar panels, but they don't brush the snow off it in the winter. And so, you know, when they do that measurement and verification, they'll say, look, we can't come out here and
Right.
do that for you, and we're not going to pay you for your own negligence. But and that's a big part of these EPC processes. You want to bring your facility guys in a little bit. They know what's breaking, they know what needs to be maintained, and they're the guys that are ultimately gonna keep it
Have to-
functioning
and have to live with it, you know.
and have to live with it. So that's a pretty important communication line between the ESCOs and the people on your team.
And and you're kind of talking about what's the other commitment of time and everything for the city is the maintenance guys are going to be escorting the energy service companies during the IGA to go and look at different areas, and you know, they're going to take pictures of all your HVAC and check every lighting and bring in contractors to look at a few things to get cost estimates. So that's the primary thing, is that they're going to be have to accommodate, you know, access and things like that.
But on the flip side of that, when the project's actually taking place, the ESCO is going to serve the role as a general contractor. So you guys don't have to assign people to manage every individual electrician or HVAC tech or building automation expert. You can just kind of sit back and watch your project happen. And I guess the other side is there's usually regular meetings every 2 weeks or every month to maintain status and progress, and somebody will need to sort of take lead on that.
Good points. Thank you.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. We appreciate your time.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great to talk to you all and meet you all.
Good luck. I hope you can get a project going. So, and George, let me know, or I can send you the rest of everything I didn't send you the first time, any contract documents or the RFP documents. I'll send those out to you, and maybe you send me an email about who you want to see. I don't think you want the whole group, but I can send it to everybody. It's up to you.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, send it to George. George can make that determination who to send it out to, right? Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Happy
Okay.
New Year. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
So, you know, I mean, my personal perspective is I think this is something we should pursue. But I don't want to be the squeaky wheel on this. Okay? You know, I keep saying this. There has to be some buy-in by the city. It's big. It's a big project. There has to be the political will for it to happen too, which is always an issue. So, if you think we ought to pursue this and bring it into the city council work session, are you ready for something like that? Or
So this has been presented to city council at a work session previously.
has
It's
it?
been a minute, but the mayor's already kind of said that we can go ahead. I think the concerns I've shared with Alan when we've discussed it are that project selection is very important. The piece that I was alluding to with switches being turned off or people putting things on to keep the lights on, and that overrides everything you're doing. And we need to pick projects that make a big difference. The lighting projects that we've done, this will be a second phase. So this won't be the first phase. A lot of the low hanging fruit's already been taken care of. But there are buildings that were either under construction or not built yet. Last time we did, so some opportunities now that those buildings have kind of been broken in, so to speak, I guess. So there's some good opportunities for baseline evaluations in this building. a couple of fire stations. The PMJC HVAC system is a disaster, and so this is a great time for us to kind of look at an opportunity to get that fixed. I think trying to say that we're gonna electrify that building is a huge ask, both in terms of operational impacts to that building. I don't think you're gonna get there, but we're starting putting something that's more efficient and optimizing the equipment that's in there will be good. I think we've done the right thing going forward on new buildings by setting the right standard for electrification of those buildings. But to set the goal that we're gonna go all electric or nothing, I think that's a big ask. But there are going to be opportunities here that need to happen. I'll tell you, PMJC is one of them right now. That's one building that we definitely look, big square footage, lots of users, and some HVAC operating efficiency issues that would benefit greatly from a look by an investment grade audit and identifying specific opportunities in there to make that better. That's just one, and I know there's more.
How much potential do you think's there, like for rooftop solar? Do you have the available real estate on top of the roof?
I can get that. We will have that very soon. So one of the other pieces that we're also
Utilize aggregation.
of from building to building, you're talking?
Well, I mean, yeah, like you can utilize a building that has a larger footprint for solar, you know,
The
and
Main Street parking garage.
aggregate that to, you know, other buildings.
I think the city has some opportunities that others don't have, right?
I don't think just like pure land purchase, right?
Well,
Like, I mean, it could just be blank land and you could build
there
the solar need wherever it may need be. And you aggregate that to those specific buildings.
I mean, I think that was part of, you know, Devin's presentation was that actually might be the most cost effective is to
Yeah.
build a single large project on a piece of land
Mhm.
and then just aggregate to multiple meters.
Okay, so you don't really have to do it meter by meter, where you say, okay, we've got this meter, we're gonna.
You used to have to be able to do that, and
Yeah.
that's what's prevented a lot of,
And now there is aggregation.
and now there's.
Yeah, that gives you a lot of, okay.
Yeah, so, and I think that was part of Devin's point when he presented a while back was that here's the meters and here's the usage and here's the opportunities. You have to actually go down by class, like, you know, by what class of meter it is, what's it called, what tariff it's under.
Yeah.
In order
There's-
to allocate it correctly.
Right,
Does the city have a special classification for their usage?
No, most of their stuff is general service, but I shouldn't say most, a lot of it's general service.
It's everything. There's a bunch of different rate schedules we have.
Yeah.
I think. It's one of the things we're working on.
You know, so I would,
Us too.
so my thought was, well, how do you organize all this, right? I mean,
You start first with having an asset management. We gotta know, I mean, literally. We are, I wouldn't say we're identifying or counting which buildings we have, but we are certainly quantifying and validating that information, because I don't even think we have a good place to start there. So over the past 2 years, we've been doing that, and this year we'll have 2/3 of the building footprint where we've laid eyes on everything. The final third is kind of some outline stuff like Beulah Mountain Park and some of the zoo structures and that kind of thing, but working our way through the core city. This year's, I think, airport and several parks facilities. There's more than that in there too, but we divided it up into thirds just to make it digestible from a manpower perspective and from a cost perspective. Starting there, those pieces are gonna help us kind of identify based on occupancy, based on energy consumption, good targets to identify for which ones do we want to suggest as potential projects for an EPC. So we're there, we're close. And just once we do that and we identify those buildings, then the slate of projects comes back. I think we just need to take a good hard look at the type of project that we decide, what kind of criteria we want to set for which ones would be selected, vice which ones might be deferred.
and the attractiveness is just the amount of the grant.
Based on payback, based on likelihood that it will remain sustainable.
Dependencies.
Yes, if we're talking about a whole lot of, it requires a long-term contract to come in and support, to keep things going, that's not what we want. We want something that's gonna run and keep going, that we can maintain. I mean, those are opportunities where sometimes the cost benefit analysis doesn't break those things out.
Right.
And I don't know how we quantify that or how, some of that will bear out in the IGA process and
Yeah.
in the when project selection. Those are, you know, we don't have to commit to every single project that they identify in that list. We can say these are the ones we want to go for based on payback, or this one has good payback, but it depends on a lot of things that have risk. We can make a decision at that point.
I was gonna say, and you don't really have to quantify it from a dollar perspective, but maybe just a low, medium and high risk factor of maybe having, you know, maybe not succeeding based on other factors, right? Like you.
Those are big. And my past experience with EPCs has been that very same thing where it's been most of the projects are work infrastructure, hard things installed. As long as they're being maintained, you're good. Things that depend on human comfort, temperature, lights, they are very finicky and it's tougher to control. So getting wattage down, getting you know, making the equipment more efficient rather than making it so dependent on whether somebody has a floor heater under their desk or not.
It's like you
Is
do one before the other, like
when just
like the hard asset, like you
yes.
said, like.
And when you see those on the list,
Yeah.
you're gonna be able to go, that's a.
The net zero stuff and
Yes.
then begin to manage like what's inside of there, yeah. Since, well, and with batteries coming available, the hard assets are even more attractive.
Sure.
Than like replacing all of your HVACs that may or may not have still a 10-year useful life, like might as well spend, you know, the amounts on batteries and charge up and be able to sustain, you know, the net coverage of what that is, not necessarily do you have to replace every appliance and every light. Like, you know, but I don't think it's quite there yet, but batteries, right? Yeah.
We're also gonna have buildings too out there that are more less human occupancy and just more space,
Yeah.
more other thing. I mean,
Pump houses,
Correct.
like, yeah, maintenance or.
places
yeah.
where you have process optimization opportunities that I think it'd be good to see what they suggest out of those.
Yeah.
I think there's been some confirming things. We just intuitively know, like at PFJC, like I said, we did that one audit in there a few months back, and they said exactly what we thought was going on. At least they were a little more specific. And an investment grade audit might get into more detail there and provide some more refined opportunities to think
Well,
about.
I think we're, you know, those opportunities exist is, you know, if we want to go to renewables and do this behind the meter, they could put a plan for how to do that. You know, they could assess, you know, the costs and all that and the benefits.
His point about the project needs to pay for itself.
Yes.
And that's why we're seeing a lot more of these renewable projects coming in, is because they're becoming more cost effective, right? I think that if we are able to do something where we're, you know, using some of that excess space out by our new fire station to set up a solar garden, that we can offset city usage somewhere. Those are all great opportunities, whether that's an EPC project or something else. Either way, I think there's multiple ways to.
I was thinking this would, you know, by having the contract, that would provide the resources to push this forward, right? Where you're kind of dealing with a lot of day-to-day issues. Of course, these things are the fun things to work out too, right? So.
And then the other component on the financial end of this, right, is that there's no free lunch. Right? They're not doing this assessment for free, even if it doesn't cost anything up front, right? It's built into the back end. And the profit is built into the savings that we're gonna generate as well. And so just making sure that we're managing the financial analysis of this to make sure we're getting a reasonable deal. It's very sure not, but it does free up the capital, doesn't require the outlay up front. So there's a lot of benefits to the structure.
Could I just ask a quick question? Andrew and Ken, if I hear what you're saying is you're gonna come back to this group with more specific information about what you want to do exactly? Or how will what steps will we take now going forward?
I think the two steps we need to take is get the MOU in place, and then secondly, again, if that's not binding, that's easy to do. the other piece of this is committing the funds necessary for the assessment, so that per square foot cost, getting a ordinance passed to budget and appropriate that into a project is gonna take a little bit of time, not much. But we need to buy in there and we need to appropriate those funds from somewhere that it's not in the current capital budget. So little conversation to be had, I think, but it's something that over the next couple of months could probably be put into place. And you could be on your way with starting an EPC in the next.
That's
3 to 6
good,
months.
that's clear. George, are you capturing all this? I hope. Because I think, yeah. All right, we've got a recording, so that's good. I think having that, you know, some sort of schedule we can measure to and understand what's coming up is great. Thanks, Andrew.
You bet.
So who would execute the MOU?
We'll look at it. We'll make sure. If it can be in the department, that's great. If it's not, if it's got to come to the mayor, that's fine. Those typically don't need council approval if they're, I think if they're not obligated by the.
So 1.5 million times 22.5 cents is 337 $500, right? So-
I would say if we're gonna do this, there's probably half that is probably real space you wanna go in and do an energy assessment. So
Okay.
if we could put, I think at my initial, I don't think those prices have changed since the last time we talked about this. I think we said about 150K if we set that aside. That would take care of almost everything that we're really worried about in terms of energy consumption. We're not looking at picnic pavilions and those things, so those would come out. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in there, small footprint things. So even if we were doing half of that footprint in a phase, and we need to add some square footage later, I mean, if we come up with more, it's not that much more to add. Well, 150 to,
If you were to look at that square footage footprint outside of EPC, like, obviously, you have to use EPC to access some of these grants and some of the things there. Are there opportunities outside of EPC to where, like, you don't need the
correct,
whole $337,000 for them to tell you your HVACs are bad and your lights suck, like, you know,
you can do this
kind
on
of do
your own.
that, yeah,
We can pay for an assessment. We
right,
can go out and bond and do our own thing. I mean, it
Right.
just takes the capital and the people to do it. Either way, either.
And it helps. you
are there
locate-
grants outside of EPC?
This is, the benefit of this is the resources are kind of built into the back end.
Yeah,
And you don't have to put it all up front, and you get to take advantage of having the technical expertise on the EPC contract. And all of that.
like you,
I think-
kind of add a whole energy office to your
Yeah.
team.
I think this Colorado Energy Office is lowering the risk to do this too, right? I mean, you know, you have this consulting cost,
Yeah.
right? The assessment cost that's really at risk.
Well, it's pretty high too. It's good.
But if you go forward to it, it's kind of rolled into the, you know, the whole project. So really, you never, you know, if you don't do it, that's what the risk is, right? If you go forward with it, then really that cost is absorbed into the improvements you're gonna make to save money. So it sounds like the next step is to get that MOU in place, and then maybe we can report back on that at our next meeting to see progress. I'm happy that there's interest in this.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was kind of
It's
leading.
an action item,
There's a lot of opportunity. It's
not a whole lot of action items coming out of here sometimes.
there's a lot of opportunity there. There's I think just throwing every building and every square foot on the table is an issue, right? We just need to be selective about what we're doing, but I think that'll bear itself out in the analysis and you know, it's clear we don't need an energy assessment on a picnic pavilion that doesn't have any power. So those are, we can identify how many square feet.
And the library system here is its own nonprofit.
It's not us. They're a separate government owned entity.
Great. Excellent. Well, it looks like we're just at about time, but I did want to ask the commission if this date and time still works for everyone, being the first Wednesday of the month from 4 to 5:30. If it's still a good time for at least the next following months, or if you would prefer that I create a scheduling poll to determine the best change of date. Seems like, you know, we're getting quorum here, but just wanted to open that up before we.
Is there a way
It's
to
close.
possibly look at in the mornings? Like. Is that not effective? Like, same day, like, just. 8 or 9 or something a little bit more.
I mean, yeah, we could look at that.
But
It just depends on
that, like, helps my attendance, you know,
okay,
Wednesday afternoons, like, you're usually like a Zoom for me, you know.
right.
Very rarely do I get to attend in person, but I get more out of it attending in person, so.
This is okay by me the way it is right now, but I'm pretty easy, so.
Mm.
Once it's kind of cooked into my system, you know, it's hard to change actually, but
Right.
we'll do whatever is necessary.
Are there any other folks that would like to see a time change? I mean, it has,
And I think too, like, if we were to have it in the morning, it does run the risk of, you know, having the meeting space already occupied and, you
Yeah.
know, just other commitments.
so it sounds like we're gonna keep it at this time. That's okay.
Okay, great.
You know, the other piece is we've got the strategic planning session coming up. That may be in addition to our commission meeting, or maybe we can work it out to have one of our meetings have that. We may need a bigger time commitment. If that's the case, you know, go to maybe a couple hours rather than an hour and a half or something like that. I do appreciate you being here too, Andrew, so I feel like you're kind of part of this commission too.
Oh. All right. I appreciate you letting us participate.
I appreciate you bringing all this knowledge too, you know how things work in the city, so.
Sometimes.
Okay, anything else? If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank everybody for attending, good meeting, so.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. See you next month.
All right.